Whether you call it the Next Gen or the Gen 7, it was without question the most hyped stock car in NASCAR history. Compared to the previous 6, this one is totally unrecognizable. There were major changes implemented to the aero and downforce packages, as well as switching to only spec chassis. You also had changes to the wheel design, the rear suspension, the transmission, and even the mirrors. Not only was this car designed to bring back the parity the fans desperately wanted, but also to improve the racing, especially on intermediate tracks. As of this upload, the Next Gen is close to finishing its sophomore year, and without question, the racing on intermediate tracks has improved, and the super speedway package is phenomenal. But as far as the short tracks and road courses go, that's a much different story. While it's sad but true, NASCAR fans no longer look forward to short tracks, and it's very hit or miss on road courses. This has everyone wondering what is wrong with the Next Gens. We're gonna analyze the issues with this car, as well as going over some possible solutions. The Next Gen's inaugural season in 2022 was very up and down. For the most part, the racing product improved on intermediate tracks, and of course, the super speedways were still good. As for the road courses, I felt like the races were better a year ago, but the short tracks have not changed one bit. While the racing product needed improvement in some areas, the more serious issues had to do with crappy parts and driver safety. The crappy part failures were very noticeable, as it happened every other week. The safety aspect was concerning, as multiple drivers had their seasons ended with concussions. Drivers complained about the rear end collisions all season, as they had more of a significant impact on the Next Gen car. This was completely unacceptable by today's racing safety standards. After the Next Gen's first year produced mixed results, NASCAR went to work at making improvements.
There's a couple pieces in front, they call them engine strakes, basically vertical fences that wipe out the wash from the tires. That's helping the front. In the rear diffuser, they call them strakes. There's 5 vertical fences within the diffuser that organize the air. They're going to take 3 of those away as well.
Those engine strakes, you can't see them when cars are on the ground or on the racetrack. They're gone. In the back of the car, 3 of those vertical things, those strakes that Todd talked about, they have also been removed to reduce rear downforce. And that small spoiler means less drag. What does that mean? It feels like it has more horsepower.
When you look at this car, and they did test this package back at Phoenix in January, and something very similar to it, they saw that the cars were like 7 miles an hour slower in the middle of the corner, but because of that acceleration with no drag, they still made the same terminal speed at the end of the straightaway. So a lot more braking, a lot more slipping and sliding with these cars.
And why should you care? Slipping and sliding means passing. I believe they're on the right track for the short tracks and the road courses in 2023.
Yeah, about that. As far as the safety aspects go, NASCAR made a few notable changes for 2023. The metal bars were removed in some areas to enhance the Next Gen car's ability to collapse and diffuse energy away from the cockpit. Pivot points were added to encourage deformation while protecting both the oil tank and fuel cell. The new center and rear clips on the car's chassis were also altered to better absorb rear impacts. There were also altercations to the mufflers for noise reduction and a bigger size of cooling vents on the hood to regulate heat. NASCAR also mandated new incident data collection systems on every single Cup Series car for 2023. This was added to give the sanctioning body more dedicated GPS data, providing a more powerful data set for NASCAR's crash analysis. We now fast forward to the present day. Did these changes improve the Next Gen in 2023? Well, to some extent. The car's safety is way better compared to a season ago, and we don't have as many crappy part failures. Unfortunately, that's where the positives end. We already know the intermediates and super speedways are fine, but even though these aero and downforce changes were meant to improve short track and road course racing, it really hasn't, because just a little over 2 months into the season, drivers were already complaining about the short track package. But oddly enough, according to NASCAR statistics, there were more green flag passes than in either of last season's 2 Martinsville races combined. This is why context is important. There were 10 lead changes in that race, but only 3 happened on track. And when those 3 happened, it only came because the top 2 drivers were on the same tire strategy. You want more proof? Despite having an average running position of 21st, Joey Logano ended up finishing second. He was lapped twice in the race and didn't run in the top 15 until a little more than 100 laps to go. Basically, you had 30 plus drivers running within a tenth of each other with not a whole lot of tire fall off and horsepower. These teams are stuck in a box with these engines because NASCAR wants them to keep lowering the horsepower. Less horsepower means more shifting. The cars are also planted lower to the ground, making for way less sliding. And finally, the dirty air. My God, the dirty fucking air. Road courses have the same problem. The Watkins Glen race was one of the most boring I have ever seen. And just like Martinsville, Watkins Glen is one of those tracks on the schedule that usually produces some of the best races. Those are pretty much all of the negatives the NextGen has went through in less than 2 seasons. Now that we've gone over the negatives, let's go over some solutions. While I have some ideas in mind, drivers stating their opinions on the matter hold a whole lot more weight. We're gonna play a couple of clips that I think are very eye-opening. The first is from a test session press conference at New Hampshire, where Chase Elliott and Christopher Bell were asked if the current NextGen changes for short tracks and road courses could hold up until potentially more horsepower came into play. They didn't hold back their thoughts on the matter.
Do you think the aero changes and tire changes can kind of make up that difference until potentially next season and the horsepower changing?
Yeah, no, it's not going to change it a whole lot, I don't think. Not unless they, narrow the tire or something, take 3 or 4 inches off the width of the tire. No, probably not, in my opinion.
Yeah, I guess from my standpoint, everything that we're doing is just a Band-Aid for the gutless engines that we have today. So, we keep taking downforce out because we try and get less grip in the cars, but if we put horsepower in it, I don't think we have near the problems today that we have.
Well, with Yates saying, last week or a couple days ago that 50 to 100 wasn't unrealistic, do you think we will see that change before the end of the season by any chance?
No, not next
Wishful
year.
thinking at most on my part?
I mean, everything that I've been told is no, period.
The drivers say one thing, and you have engine shops and budgets and things. I don't really see where having a little more horsepower is going to change the bottom line that much. Personally, to me, if you're increasing your entertainment value on track, it might be worth a little extra on the bottom line.
If you liked the gutless engine comment from Christopher Bell, don't worry, he's not finished. On the David Garvel Racing podcast, he gives more thoughts on the NextGen's issues, but what stood out the most in this interview was him saying what he wishes the Cup Series drivers were racing instead of the NextGens.
And I think that shifting is what has hurt, or a big part of what's hurt the short track racing, especially at a place like Martinsville. You don't pay the price for a mistake on corner entry. Like if you slide on corner entry, you're already downshifting, and then you can accelerate off the corner just as hard as the guy behind you. So it makes it extremely hard to make a run on a guy.
I'm sure you probably have to do maybe a little bit of tire management on exit now because you get to drop down and have a lot shorter gear ratio.
So I would love to tell you we do, but we don't have enough horsepower for that. So
still, no, even on short tracks?
You drop a gear at Martinsville, you drop a gear and you're just right foot down. It would be nice to be able to get into the 900 range or 1,000 range for sure. Honestly, David, I think that the current Xfinity series, what they have is a gold mine. If we could have the Cup Series drivers run Xfinity cars, I think it would be amazing. Every time I watch Xfinity races or even driving them, it's just like, man, these things are, you're sliding all over the place, a little bit more modern, but largely they're still what NASCAR was through the 2000s. And it would be so cool if we could have the Darlington throwback race, just everyone go get an Xfinity car and drive that. I think that'd be cool.
Wow, that's a lot to take in. A NASCAR Cup Series driver saying the throwback race should be Xfinity Series cars instead of NextGens. Shout out to Christopher Bell for keeping it real. But after watching these 2 clips, I think it's pretty obvious what the solution is. At least the main solution. And that is more horsepower. Now let's say NASCAR decides to add 850 to 900 horsepower. Take away the tapered spacer and let them race. The lack of horsepower and the wide tires have killed short track racing as we know it. If we were to do this, there'd be a lot more sliding, allowing for a lot more battles, which leads to a better racing product. The next gen wouldn't be perfect, but we'd have less problems than we currently do. Perhaps taking off the diffuser and lowering the spoiler to 3 inches might also help. In conclusion, short track and road course racing needs to be saved immediately. They make up a large portion of the schedule, and even though NASCAR has tried their best to improve it, but they haven't yet. Until we solve the main issue, which is adding more horsepower, I think we're destined to see this type of racing for quite some time. Hopefully I'm wrong, but let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you agree with my assessment, or do you think they should do something else? Don't hold back and let me know it all in the comments below. And once again, that'll do it for another video. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is Black Flags Matter. Catch you next time.